this is MJ, and in today's tutorial I'll be showing you how to make a men's bulky weight cardigan. So the yarn that I'm using for this project is Titan. It's from Mary Maxim, and it is a bulky weight 100% acrylic yarn. And there will be a link in the description box on where you can purchase it. I'm using the color light gray. You'll also need 2 crochet hook sizes. So I'm using an 8mm as well as a 6.5mm. And these are my Taurus Streamline hooks from Furls Crochet. And if you check the description box, there will be a link and also a coupon code if you're interested in purchasing these hooks. This is a beginner-friendly pattern. It uses basic stitches. I've used an extended single crochet stitch pattern throughout the majority of this design, and a simple single crochet in the back loop only ribbing. So for the ribbing, we'll be using our smaller crochet hook. And we'll begin with a slip knot. And I'll be chaining out a total of 7. Okay, so this will be the width of the ribbing. So now we'll single crochet in the second chain from the hook and in every chain across. So you should have a total of 6 stitches. We'll chain 1 and turn, and then we begin working in that back loop only. So you're taking your hook going down through the center of the stitch. We'll chain 1 and turn. Again, working in the back loop only. And this is what we're just going to do until we reach the desired length. So I'll be working on a medium size today, so that will be a 44-inch finished chest measurement. So for the medium size, you'll need to work a total of 42 rows. So now I just wanted to give you some measuring tips. So what I like to do is take my husband's favorite sweater that he likes the fit, he likes the length, and I measure that sweater out. So what it is in width, what it is in length, the length of the arms, so I can get an idea of how he wants his sweater to fit. So that's what you want to do, and then you want to go to the PDF, look at the schematic, and pick the size that you feel will fit properly. So if 44 inches like this one is a good fit for your husband, so across you're looking at, if you measure across the sweater, that's going to be about 21.5 to 22 inches. Okay, so that's what is a good fit for my husband, so that's the size I'm doing. Now, my husband's also 6'1", so he's quite tall and has long arms. So there will be modifications in this pattern for you to adjust that, because your husband may be a bit shorter and you may not want the same length to the body or the length to the arms that I'm going to make for this one. So you have your bust size or your chest size, which is 44 inches, but then we also have to take into account the length and the arm length for the man that we're making this for. Now, this could also be made for a woman as well. This is definitely unisex. So do the same as well. Take one of your, if you're a female, like take your sweater, measure it out, and then you can go from that as well. So now for the 44-inch size, I worked up a total of 42 rows. Now I've already worked up the back, so I've just gone ahead and made a smaller section that I'll work on my front, but it's just basically showing you the same thing. So now I usually count my rows by the ridges. So each ridge is equal to 2 rows, so it makes it really easy to count across. Now I have an odd number for the front panel, which I'll go through with you in a minute as well. So mine doesn't end even. Typically I like to go with even numbers because the ridging is nice and even then. So across you're gonna have 42. I have 19. It's not quite half because we're gonna have that ribbing being added to the side. So instead of 21, I'm only going with 19. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, and then I have my extra here, which is my row 19. So then I just flip that this is my right side. When you're working this way, you're gonna end like this onto the right side, and you'll just have a longer piece for your back than your front panel. So the sleeves, the front panel, the back, they all begin the same way with the band. And then what you'll do is change over to your larger hook, so the 8mm, and we're gonna work across in single crochets. So we'll chain 1, and now you'll be working 1 single crochet per row. So it doesn't matter whether you're working on your band, the cuff, your sleeve, your back, or your front, and doesn't matter what size, we're working it all the same way. So we're working across 1 stitch per row. So for the back, you'll be working across 42, or look at your pattern and work across as many as you need for your size. So I'm just gonna complete that and then I'll meet you up again. Okay, so for the back, you will have worked across 42 stitches, and for the front panel, both your left and right front panel will begin this way. So 19 rows with 19 stitches worked across. Now what we'll do is chain 1 and turn. And then we'll be working extended single crochet stitches. So an extended single crochet is a very simple stitch. We're just extending the height. Okay, so what we're gonna do, we won't count the chain 1 as a stitch. We'll work right into that first stitch, pulling up a loop. Now, typically you'll yarn over, pull through 2. Well, we're gonna yarn over and pull through 1. Then we'll yarn over and pull through 2. So go through the stitch, pulling up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1, pull through 2. And what you'll find is the extended single crochet really will flare out. It gauges much bigger than a single crochet stitch. So this band is really gonna kind of tug in, but then like when we block it, it can flatten out to really come out to the size of the sweater. So if you look at the back here, let me see if I can get it all in. Can't really get it all into the picture, but it definitely tucks in a little bit, but when we block this piece, it will all block out nicely to measurements. You don't want your band to be too big that it stretches out bigger than your sweater, so that's why I like to go down a hook size for it. So once we get to the end, we'll chain 1 and turn. Okay, and now what I'd like you to do, we're back to the right side of our work, and I suggest marking it with a stitch marker. This is just going to keep you on track throughout so you know where you are. And I've also marked my piece over here. So now all we're going to be doing is working extended single crochets for this pattern. So it's really a simple, basic cardigan that will work up, especially in the bulky weight yarn, it will work up really quickly. Okay, so what I want you to do is work a total of 44 rows. Now that is going to get you a length of a cardigan that's about 27 inches, which is the size I need. Now, if you want to reduce that by an inch or 2, that's fine. I just want you to end on your wrong side, on a wrong side row, which is an even number. So if, let's say, you only want your cardigan, let's say total you only want it to be 25 inches long, then you want to work up until it's about 24. Okay, so the gauge for this pattern is 7.5 stitches and 7 rows. So just make sure to check your gauge as well so that you're on track with your measurements. So now I've worked a total of 44 rows in total. So I ended on my wrong side. I know I'm back to my right side because I've marked that. And now what I've done here already is marked off my neck opening. So if you're working on a larger size or a smaller size, you will count over a different number of stitches, but all of the sweaters have a 14 stitch neck opening. So from marker to marker, it's going to be 14 inches. Now for my size, I have 14 inches on, or 14 stitches on either side. So I'm even here. So I counted over, I marked. So now we can do the shoulder section, which I'm going to work through with you. And it is going to be just a total of 2 rows, which is about 1 inch. So just work extended single crochets. And I've marked my neck opening so that I can work right up to this stitch. So that should be 14 stitches for this size. And once you work your way across, we're going to chain 1 and turn and work back stitches across. And then at that point, I will get you to fasten off. And you can leave a tail if you'd like for sewing the front to the back shoulder. So I'll just continue working across this in my extended and I will fasten that off. Okay, so pull that through. Now what I want you to do is make sure we're back to the right side. And this is why it's so handy just to have the marker, just to make sure we're doing everything on the right sides of our work. I'm just going to take my yarn here. So now making sure you're on your right side, you're going to join in to the stitch next to the marker. So we're going to the left of the marker. We'll chain 1 and work an extended single crochet. I'm just going to crochet over that tail as I work across. So now what you'll do is work across to the end, chain 1 and turn, come back and fasten off again at the marker. Okay, so I'm just fastening that off. And now our back panel is complete. So we just have a small shoulder section. This will just go nicely around the neck. And I'm going to set this aside now. Okay, so I'm going to bring in my front panel now and show you what I've been working on. So you want to start out with 2 front panels the exact same. So as we worked through earlier, we have our 19 row band. We're working 19 stitches. Now I am working up until I have 24 rows. Okay, so now if you have changed the length of your back, you want to adjust at this point. So if you did 2 less rows than me, then you only want to work 22. If you did 4 less rows than me, then you only want to do 20. Okay, so just make sure the next part will be the same whether you make alterations or not. So this is the section that you want to line up. So go by row numbers. So if you, again, I'll just repeat that. If you reduced your back by 2 rows, about 1 inch, then you want to reduce this section also by 2 rows. So again, I have done 24 and this is for a 27-inch length cardigan. So what we need to start doing now is working decreases because we want the panel to curve up to our neckline, okay? The neck opening. So we're working right with this panel and I think I'll begin, so I'm going to work over as if I'm looking at it, the left, which is actually your right side. So if you put it on, so when we're looking at it, it's to our left. So we're gonna curve in this way, but if you're actually wearing it, it's actually your right side. Okay, so that's the one I'm gonna work on first, showing you. So this is the right side of my work. So we know when we sit our two panels out, this one's gonna go here, the other one's gonna go here, so the other one will need to go. Basically, the decreases are the same, it's just they're gonna be on opposite ends of the row. But I will work through both the right and left side with you, just so that you don't get confused. So what we're gonna do is, once you've completed working 24 rows, these are all at 19 stitches. If you're working on a different size, just as many stitches as your size calls for. Then what we'll do is a decrease. So to do the extended single crochet decrease, I'm gonna go through, pulling up a loop. I'm gonna go right into the next stitch, pull up a loop, I'll yarn over, pull through two, yarn over, pull through two. Okay, so that's the decrease I'm working for across the first two stitches. So I'm just reducing this by one stitch, and then I'm gonna work across in extended single crochets. Okay, so once you work all the way across, we're gonna chain one and turn, and then I'm gonna work across one extended single crochet into every stitch. Okay, so just work your way all the way across. So I just wrote this out quickly for you, just so you see how our decrease pattern is gonna work. So this is row 25. We just did our decrease. We started into row 26, so 26, 27, and 28, there'll be no decreases. Row 29, so another odd number so that we're working them all in the first stitch, will be another decrease. We'll go through and do 3 rows without a decrease, and then row 33, 37, and 41 are all decreases. So we have a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 decreases. And our final 3 rows, so we want to equal again 44, because that's what my back was, and that's why if you changed, I want you to change your row number before you hit this pattern. So we decrease, we do 3 rows, we decrease, we do 3 rows. So this is how the panel is all gonna work now, okay? So I'm gonna work mine off camera. You can go ahead and work through that. You're gonna do them all just like I showed you, the decrease in the first 2 stitches, okay, for these rows, and then we'll meet up again. Okay, so we worked through the front right. Now I'm gonna show you the difference with the front left. So the front right, we decreased the first 2 stitches. For the front left, we're looking, this again is the right side of our panel, we want this side going up. So this time we're gonna work across to the last 2 stitches. So I'm gonna go ahead and work extended single crochets across to the last 2. Okay, so once you've worked across to your final 2 stitches, we'll do the decrease. And then the pattern is gonna work the exact same. So that was row 25, but for the front left, we're decreasing at the end of the row. The front right, we decrease at the beginning of the row. So for row 26, 27, and 28, we're just working 1 in every stitch across. And then we'll do another decrease on row 29, and it will be at the last 2 stitches. Okay, so that's how now the front left panel is worked exactly the same. The decreases are just at the end of the row instead of at the start of the row. So this can get worked up pretty quickly. I'll work mine off camera. Get your front panels done, set them aside, and then next we'll work on the sleeve. Okay, so the sleeve cuff is worked just like we did the front back panels. We're gonna start with a chain of 7, and I'm working with the 6.5 millimeter hook. Okay, so exactly the same way we're working single crochets in each chain across so that we have a total of 6 stitches. Chain 1 and turn. Now we're going to work in the back loops only. Okay, and for the size that I'm working on, we're going to do a total of 18 rows. So I'm just going to go ahead and get my 18 rows worked up. Okay, so I have worked up 18. So now we're going to switch over to the larger hook. This is worked just as we did our front and back. So we're going to work a single crochet in every stitch across. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so I've worked all the way across, and that will be your row 1. We'll chain 1 and turn, work extended single crochets into every stitch across. Okay, so I'll quickly work that across and then we'll meet up again. Okay, so my sleeve is starting out at 18 stitches, and for my husband, I want his sleeve at about 15 inches. So that's about 28 stitches wide I need to make it. So the difference between 18 and 28 is 10. Okay, and we increase 2 stitches for each row. So we need to do a total of 5 increases. So what I like to do is you can do some simple math and you can just divide out. So I wasn't starting my increase until row 3, so I need a total of 34 rows. So I just subtract that, take 32, divide it by 5, and it will give you roughly how many you need to leave in between before you do another increase. So this is the only part that gets confusing if you don't want the sleeve as long as what I've made it. So my band is about 2 inches. I need my husband's arm length his arm length is about 23, but as a rule of thumb, I do the sleeve length about 2 inches shorter because of the overhang, because it's an oversized fit sweater. So it's a drop shoulder, so that's why we go a little bit less. So I figured out all the math with that he needs 19 inches worth of length, not including the band, and that worked out to about 34 rows. So if you say, nope, that's too long, my husband has shorter arms, I don't need it that long, what I would suggest is instead of doing your increase in every 7th stitch like I'm doing here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you may need to do it into every 6th stitch, okay? Just evenly space your increases out. I know I need 5 increases in total. You just want to look at it that way. You want to evenly space them out. So if you adjust your sleeve length, you're also going to have to adjust the increase, or what's going to happen is you're going to run out of rows to do that increase. So for my husband's sweater, this works out perfectly. We're just going to gradually increase this arm so that we get it up to, at this point, we'll be at 28 stitches, and then we'll work those final rows just at the 28 stitch mark. Okay, so now we're on to row 3, and this is how the increase will look. So we're going to increase in the first stitch, and we're also going to increase in the last stitch. So that's why we're doubling. We're doubling up this time, as opposed to the front panel was only decreasing on the one side, so it was only 1 stitch. So let's go ahead and add 2 in the first. So 2 extended single crochets, and then I'll work across. Okay, so now in the last stitch of the 3rd row, we're going to add 2. Chain 1 and turn. Okay, so now we're up to 20 stitches at this point, and then we'll work 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows at 20 stitches. Then we'll do another increase. So at row 10, I want you to increase again up to 22 stitches. Then we'll work another 6 rows at 22. Then at row 17, we'll do another increase. We'll be up to 24. We'll work another 6 rows at 24. At row 24, we'll do another increase. This will bring us up to 26 stitches. Then another 6 rows at 26 stitches. And then here we are at the end. And I want you to work that total of 34 rows. So you need to make 2 sleeves in total. So once the sleeves are complete, we're going to have all our pieces, and you're going to see, even though this sweater, I know I do a lot of one-piece designs, even though this one is in pieces, it's still really easy to put together. It's a really basic design, and then we'll finish off with our ribbing that's going to edge. Once we seam it all, we'll actually block it, seam it, and then we're going to finish with the ribbing with some buttonholes. And it's going to be really simple and quick to make this sweater. So I'm going to finish now working up all my pieces. I'm going to get those blocked so that we can meet back up again for the next step. Okay, so your next step was blocking all of your pieces. Now I just steam blocked mine to measurements, and you just have to be careful with the steamer with acrylic that you don't melt the fibers. I find the acrylic, it does work up pretty much to measurements, so you won't need to do any aggressive blocking. I find with the natural fibers, they relax quite a bit when you wet them, so pinning them out and soaking them is more critical than an acrylic sweater. But if you've decided to use a natural fiber, you could soak it and then pin it out to measurements. So I just did a steam block for mine. It's come out really nice. Here are my front panels. Now I've put right sides facing here for starting to seam. So I have stitch markers marked, so I know that this is those are my right sides, so I have them facing. Now what you're gonna do is just take your tail that we left on the back, and we're just gonna seam the shoulders together. So that will be our first step with seaming. So you'll want to get these stitched together. Your stitches should line up perfectly. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14. Okay, so I'll take my yarn needle here for bulky yarn, and I'm just going to go through each of the stitches, and we're just going to whip stitch this together. Okay, if you have another preferred seaming method, go ahead and use that. But I'm just going to go ahead going through each stitch. So you'll want to do both shoulders, and then I will meet you back up again to show you how to attach the sleeves. Okay, so once you have your shoulder seamed, I want you to have your right sides again facing out. So this is what your shoulder seam is going to look like. You want to find that seam right here, and we're going to line up the center of the sleeve. So again, this is my right side facing of my sleeve. I want the right side facing the right side. Just gonna attach that right to that seam. So that's the important part. You want to make sure that you have your sleeve in the center of your shoulder seam, and then we're just going to sew the sleeve to the cardigan. So again, take your yarn needle, and we're just going to seam it all the way across. So you're just going through each stitch of the sleeve and then just going over to that cardigan piece and just working it through. Okay, so half of my sleeve is 14, so I've worked across now 14 stitches. Then I'll just continue. I can remove this marker now. And sometimes it's good if you even give it a little bit of a stretch before you sew it, and that will just stop it from, sometimes the sleeve, when you sew on a sleeve, it can tend to bunch in a little bit or look bunched. So by eliminating that is just giving that a stretch. So when you're sewing it, it's stretched out, and then it shouldn't pull when it's all assembled. So I'm just going to leave my tail. I'm not going to weave it in just in case I need to make any changes later and pull that back if I'm not liking how it looks. I'm just going to not weave that in. But next I'm just going to go over and do the exact same thing with the other sleeve. Okay, so once you have your sleeves done, I haven't done anything with the tails. Like I say, if for any reason when your husband tries it on, or son, or whoever's wearing the sweater, and the sleeves, let's say the sleeves ended up being too long or too short, or there was just any issues that you didn't like, that they didn't like the fit, if you don't weave your tails, it's a lot easier to pull it back and make any adjustments that you need to. Because I know I had some people make one of my other sweaters, and once their husband tried it on, maybe some things weren't right. So just by not weaving those tails, you can easily pull it back, you know, take a couple rows off the sleeves if you need to, whatever, or add length if it ends up being too short. So now what we're going to do is, I've put the right sides facing again. We're going to seam the side and the sleeves. So you can start at, I like to start at the cuffs, working my way up to the underarm. If you don't take a piece that's long enough, just go to the underarm and then weave in your tails and then start down here. If you make a really long tail, I usually like to go about 2 times whatever the length is. Then you can just continue going all the way. And I'm hoping that mine will do the whole thing. But if I think I'm gonna run short, then I'll just weave in up at the underarm and then join on down, back down here and seam up. So I'll go through some of it with you just so you can have an idea how I'm gonna do this. So we're gonna start at the cuff, pull this through, okay, and then just go through each stitch of the cuff. So that's really easy. Just work across. And then just making sure the sleeve is all lined up right to the underarm. You're just going to go through a small section on each side. Don't go through a big chunk. Just try to pick up a small bit on each side of the sleeve. Just like this, okay? So I'm gonna finish seaming, and you're gonna wanna do this to both sides. And once everything is assembled, then we can start working on edging our front and the next, and then we can add on that ribbing. So the ribbing is gonna have, we're gonna have buttonholes. We're gonna do buttons, so it's gonna be a button up, and we're gonna do a really nice collar that's gonna fold over. It's gonna look really good and really, really sort of sophisticated for a basic cardigan like this. Okay, so I'm just gonna continue that off camera, and then I'll meet you up once I have everything seamed. Okay, so once you have your sweater completely seamed together, I just want you to have it so that it's right side out now. And what we're gonna do is edge all of the inside of our front panels around our neck. Now, if you remember, we had 44 rows in total for our panel. Now, for an extended single crochet row, we're going to be needing to add more stitches than doing one single crochet per row. So I find an extended single crochet is about the height of a half double crochet. So typically when I'm working across rows like this, I will do three single crochet stitches for every 2 rows. So basically, when I look at the row, I'll do 1, and then I'll do 2, I'll do 1, and then I'll do 2. And that should get this side looking pretty even. And in that case, I'm multiplying 44 by 1.5, so I need to do a total of 66 stitches on this side, 66 stitches on this side, plus our neck opening up at the top. So if you have altered the length of the cardigan in any way, you just want to know how many rows you did in total, and then just multiply that out by 1.5. So I'm going to take my smaller hook, I'm going to join into the bottom. So when we're going across the band, it's just 1 stitch per stitch. So we'll work 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, and then we'll do 1. And then in the next stitch, I'll do 2. Then I'll do 1 in the next row, and then 2 in the next row. Okay, so we're just gonna work like that all the way around. Okay, so now I'm coming to the shoulder, so I've done 66. I'm gonna do 67, 68, 69, 70, and that's for the 2 rows now of the back. And then we'll just work across the neck opening, which should be 14 stitches. Once you get across, you're just going to repeat the same thing. So with the shoulder and this part of the neck, we're going to have total working down another 70 stitches. So just make sure you have 70 so that both sides are equal. Okay, so once I've completed the edging, what you want to do is mark off some buttonholes. So this is where, it doesn't matter really the length of your cardigan or what size buttons you're using, you just want to evenly space them. So I decided to go with 5, and I marked off a good spacing that I liked for them. So this is all you need to do. So for my cardigan, I've gone up to 1, 2, 3, the 4th stitch. The 4th stitch here, I've marked it, and you want to mark roughly where the center of the button is going to be. And then I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So then I marked the next one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Mark the next one. So 7 stitches between each marker. And I have a total of 5. So if yours is a little shorter, you might want to reduce the number of buttons or do a bit bigger space, whatever. But this is how you can figure it out yourself. And then I'll show you how to do the buttonhole whenever you come to a marker. So now I've marked this off for a men's cardigan, but you can, if it's for women's, they typically have your buttonholes on the other side. So all you have to do is mark this side of the sweater if you want to reverse the buttons. It's really easy. So either way, doesn't matter. You just want to make sure that the buttonholes are marked off either on the left or right. So for the join as you go ribbing, we're going to chain out 7. Work back in the second chain from the hook and every chain across. Okay, so you should have 6 stitches. So now what we'll do is skip the very first stitch and we'll slip stitch into the next 2. Okay, so then we'll turn our work. We're going to work back along the band. We want to work single crochets in the back loop only. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Work a single crochet into the back loop only of each stitch. So we're using our 6.5 millimeter crochet hook. Chain 1, turn, and we're working back down. So each time, the whole band, the whole ribbing is worked single crochets in the back loop only, just like we did the other parts, except we're joining it with those slip stitches as we go. So now we're coming to the first buttonhole, so I'll show you how to work. Every time you come to the marked stitch, we're going to do a buttonhole. So we're coming to the first slip stitch. So the first row working back up will be the buttonhole. So if it was marked the second, you would make the buttonhole coming back down. So let me show you how to make the buttonhole. So we'll slip stitch in the next 2. Okay, so we'll turn. And the first row needs to have our buttonhole. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we'll do 1, 2, then we'll chain 2, and then we'll skip 2 stitches and work a single crochet in the back loop of the next 2. We'll chain 1 and turn. Continue working in the back loop. And then in the chain 2 space, we'll work 2 single crochet. Slip stitch into the next 2. Okay, so we'll basically work again, working the same way all the way up to the next marker, and then work the buttonhole just as I showed you. So this is exactly how you'll work a buttonhole row. And just every time you get to your marker for your buttonhole, make a buttonhole, okay? So I will complete those off camera and then I'll meet you back up. Okay, so I'm just finishing up with my last buttonhole. So I'm working down and we're gonna slip stitch into the next 2. Now we're going to work across, and in the final stitch I'm going to add 2 stitches, so we're going to increase up to 7. And we'll turn and work back down. Then we'll slip stitch into the next 2. chain 1 and turn. We'll slip stitch into the next 2, turn, and on this row we're going to do another increase. So we'll add 2 in that final stitch. Okay, and then we'll continue in this pattern. So we'll do 3 rows without increasing, and then on the 4th row we'll do an increase, and we're going to keep doing that until we get to 12 stitches in total. Okay, so I kept increasing every 4th row until I had a total of 12 stitches. Okay, so I've worked that. Now what I wanted to do is mark off the other side for decreasing. So the easiest way to do that was to count my rows from the bottom up to where I started increasing. So this row here is the 37th row, and then in the 38th row I started the increase. So I just counted on this side. So I've marked off my 37th stitch. So I guess I marked these wrong. So I marked off my 37th stitch, but I should have done the 38th for each of the decreases. So I just need to shift these markers up 1. So let's just say I've marked the 38th stitch, count 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, mark the next, 1, 2, 3, 4, mark the next. And so this will show you, we're gonna work our rows of 12 all the way around to that first marker, and then we'll start decreasing every 4th stitch so that we're back down to 6 stitches. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna work to this marker, and then I'll meet you up again. Okay, so once we get to our marker, we're gonna do the decrease, and we're coming to it here. It's the first stitch, so it will be on the first row. So we'll slip stitch 2. We increased at the end of the row, so I'll also decrease at the end of the row. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and pull up a loop, go through the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through all 3, chain 1 and turn. And we'll work down. Okay, and then we're going to do the same thing when we get to each marker. So just continue decreasing every time you hit the marker. So we're going to decrease right back down to 6 stitches, and then you're just going to work the join as you go ribbing all the way down, and that's all you need to do. So I'm going to do mine off camera and meet you up when I'm finished. Okay, so once you get to the end, I want you to end here, because I think going back down, it's not going to look as nice. So if you end up here at the top, we'll just fasten off. You can weave in that tail. And then what you want to do is sew on your buttons, and you're just sewing the buttons on opposite the buttonholes. So you just want to make sure that they line up. So I like to kind of just put it over top and make sure that the center of the button goes at the hole, which is about here. So you can just take your yarn so you just want to get the buttons sewn on. Then you can just knot it. And trim the tails, and just sew all of your buttons, and just make sure that they line up nicely. Okay, so I finished sewing on all the buttons. I'll just do it up just to make sure. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel and tap the bell to stay updated on all my new videos and tutorials. Thanks so much, guys. Have an awesome day.